My name is Joshua, and I am the Tribune. Something we must be prepared for is when we agree to work with God and He calls us to the table and says, I would like to create something with you and do something new and fresh through your life for your purpose to touch the entire globe. We need to know that He has to first recalibrate our creative taste. This is very important because if we don't understand this, then we will come to God with our ideas based off of what we're interested in at the time or popular culture or what the world teaches us we should be interested in. And we'll bring that to the table and He'll burn it up in front of us. And then we'll waste time because He's going to either be burning stuff in front of us, saying, no, I don't want to do that. No, not that. That's nasty. That's stupid. Or He'll just be throwing it in the trash. Every time you do it, He'll just throw it in the trash. And He'll just keep throwing things in the trash until you realize that you are going to have to recalibrate your creative taste so that it is more aligned with His creative taste. Now, really, what does this look like practically? What it means is He's going to show you, listen, I don't like this. I don't like this that you've been interested in. That's not me. That's filthy. That's evil. This is nasty. And this over here is subpar and inferior. You thought it was great, but it's total foolishness. So what He does is He starts collecting all these things that you really appreciated, and He starts throwing them in the trash. And then what He does is then He starts teaching you how He wants you to marinate based off of principles that He wants you to learn. And He will choose what He wants you to pay attention to, and He will start teaching you His taste and what He feels is His level of creativity for your purpose and your life and the mission that He's calling you to. So when this comes, you have to understand that it's going to be uncomfortable at first because it's against popular culture. And at first, you're going to feel like He's taking away a lot of things. He's going to strip you. And you're going to feel like you don't have anything left. The reason is He has to strip everything down to zero first, so that from there He can build pure and build powerful. You want a powerful base with God. So what He'll do is He'll make sure you have that. Now, after He starts building with you, and even the base of what He builds with you, as He teaches you how to marinate in principles, how He says, this is how I think for this situation or this part of this creativity, I want to think like this. They think like this, but we're going to think like this. When He starts doing that, you won't be able to imagine doing it any other way. That's what I can promise you. Because His level is beyond anything that you have ever seen. And this is the exciting part, is that as you move forward with God in this way, He keeps surprising you, and He keeps outdoing Himself. And you keep thinking, could it get better than this? This is crazy. And He says, of course it can. And He shows you the next level, and the next level, and the next level. Now, this message is really first meant to prepare you for the stripping part. Because if I don't prepare you for the stripping part, where He starts tearing everything down that you think that you liked or popular culture that you thought was amazing, then you will be very confused and you'll think, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I'm not working with God. Because the greatest people and the most wonderful entertainers in the world right now are doing this, and he's actually telling me that he doesn't want that. That's what I feel. So what's wrong? No, everything's right. In fact, if you're creating things like popular culture and doing things like popular culture, you are not working with God. You're not working with God because, then, okay, why would He call you then? Why would He come and bring you to the table and say, let's do something like everybody else? And let's do something like Satan's children. I'm going to move mountains to bring you into this conference room, this heavenly conference room that is surrounded by angels, and He's sitting at the table flanked by angelic generals, and He's going to say, let's do something like Satan's doing. No. He will not do that. This is why you need to have this vision when he starts stripping things and starts pointing things out to you, and you start being dissatisfied with things, and you start saying, that's filthy, that's nasty. Then you are going in the right direction, even if it doesn't feel comfortable, even if people around you don't agree with you because they're blind. That's not because you're blind. It's because they have scales over their eyes. So when this happens, you have to understand that's gonna make you go into a place of seclusion, because you immediately, just by being dissatisfied with what the world's satisfied with and seeing what God is not pleased with and what he doesn't want you to be a part of, you're immediately separating yourself from everybody. And that's what brings you the power. Now, it's really important to understand when he's marinating you and he's teaching you these principles, you need to do everything he says. Because what he's going to start doing is he's going to start pulling from things that you probably would think he wouldn't pull from. He's going to be going way back into your childhood and pulling things out of nostalgia that you have been thinking about, that you wish you could be a part of again or feel again. And he will actually give that to you and say, this is why you feel this nostalgia about this thing when you were a child. This is why you felt this way in this situation that you love so much, but you couldn't really put your finger on why you felt like that in this situation. This is how you felt when you watched this movie when you were 7 years old. And it's not, the characters and all that don't matter, but what matters is how you feel about it, because that feeling that you had when you were 7 is exactly what I want to make the world feel when they enjoy our projects. And when your purpose begins to be powerful on the earth, I want them to feel like this. This becomes a very special time because you see that the entire time when he's tearing things down and ripping things from you and pointing out all the things he doesn't like, it was all for the purpose to get you purified and get your mind and spirit cleansed so that you can hear him properly and be effective on the level that he's calling you to. Now, when he's explaining these things to you, you need to note them very seriously. You need to remember what he speaks to you on and go with him through the process. Do not start demanding things of him and say, well, by this time we need to be doing this, and I should have this done by now. You called me, you told me we're going to do this. How come this isn't done yet? No. Because the last thing you want is a half-baked loaf of bread. And remember, you don't know how this bread is supposed to taste. You don't know what is a really good baked loaf of heavenly bread with God for your purpose. So you are going to have to trust God taking you through the process so that as you move forward, you will see this bread just keeps getting better and better and better. And it's way past what I thought it should be. On my highest level of thinking, it's way surpassed that, even in the preparation stages. So then now you begin to trust God that he knows best and that you need to follow just his specific instructions. If he says you need to get this certain book, you need to get it. If he says you need to do this, do that. If he says go back and watch every single movie from your childhood, then you need to do it. It doesn't matter what people think. It doesn't matter what you feel like this is stupid. I can't believe I have just picked all my childhood movies and just binged on them, and I'm taking notes on something that is for a 3-year-old. It doesn't matter. Because if you're obedient in these situations, you will come out with massive treasure. So it's very crucial for me to say that when you are marinating in these kind of principles with God, and he has actually wiped out all of your worldly desires and popular culture, just like everybody else likes, and he starts rebuilding you, it's important your aim should be to become what he's speaking of. Your aim should be to take the principles and make them a part of you, just as much as an organ is a part of your body. and your heart is beating and your kidneys are working, these principles should be like your organs. Because God wants you to be able to know how to operate in these principles, these creative principles, on a whim. You're going to have to be these principles. They will have to flow out of you effortlessly. So that when you sit down at the table with God and He starts speaking to you on such a high creative level that is beyond anything that you've seen in the world yet, you can take the principles He's taught you through your preparation stage and your marination stage and implement them without having to think too hard about the principles. Because God can, when He starts speaking to you about creative wonders that He is trying to piece together and prepare, and He's giving you a vision for those things, His visions are so lofty that if you don't know your principles, know the principles that He has specifically pointed out to you, then you can maybe even see it, but you can't prepare it. How is this possible, you ask me? How is it possible that I could see something and not prepare it? Because you're seeing it in your spirit. And your spirit is with God. So you have to take your spirit with God and you have to connect it to your physical hands and your brain. This is a very difficult thing to do. This is why you have to make sure you marinate with your brain on the principles He's speaking to you about over and over and over again that might not make sense along the way as He's speaking them to you. Another thing He will do is He will take principles from things that people would be ashamed to take principles of, because popular culture tells them that this thing is bad. This thing is bad, so you shouldn't touch it. No. Some of the things that the world calls us so horrible, God has hidden treasure in those things. That if you study it, you can actually extract principles that are so powerful while you leave the filth behind. I am not saying that you should be watching nasty movies, porn, profanity. That's not what I'm talking about. Because the world thinks that's okay. I'm talking about things the world thinks we can't touch that. Those are the things that God has hidden things in. He's hidden treasure in those things. That's why the world doesn't want to touch it. Me personally, I look very closely when the world doesn't want to touch something because it's bad or oh no, that's taboo. I couldn't think to be attached with that. When the world says that, I look really closely at those things because it means God has blinded the world to very special treasure that He has hidden. And if He's exposed me to that, to see that that is the case, and I feel God saying, you should look closer at that thing that they don't want to look at because I made them not want to see it too closely because there's something there for you. Then I dive into that thing. You'd be shocked at what I dive into because God is a specialist at hiding things that He wants to save for His people. This is why I'm encouraging you to drop popular culture and burn it up. His generals, their mission will be to burn up popular culture and make new culture with God. This is what we're doing here. So it's important to become this thing. You need to become the principles that He's speaking to you on. It's essential. Because then you'll have an easier time moving forward when He starts speaking to you about things that cannot be articulated. They're only articulated in your spirit with God. The Holy Spirit articulates these things to you, but you cannot necessarily even speak them to a human. You can only translate them through your preparation, and then people will have to see what you're preparing when it's time, or what you've prepared, and then they will understand. This is another way that God hides his stuff. He makes sure that you cannot articulate it. You have to do it. I'm very wary about people who talk too much, who just blab away about what God's doing through them, and they just talk so much and they can explain everything perfectly. That means that's kind of sketch to me. Because I know that when God starts creating something with you and he starts really speaking to you on his level, you cannot, not only can you not articulate it, but you should be afraid to tell me. You should be afraid to tell me for two reasons. One, out of respect to God. You should be afraid because, God, I can't even speak this to anybody unless you order that I do or allow it to. Because if I speak this to the wrong person, then not only can it damage your agenda for me, our relationship, but it also can damage my morale. Because if they don't understand, they start attacking the stuff, and I open that attack up, then now I have to fight. Or I have something else now that I have to ignore. So you need to respect what God is giving you. It's really important. So the two focuses in this message are really to prepare for God to tear down your ideas of what's great creativity and what's wonderful, and anything that the world thinks is so wonderful. He's going so much higher that he will begin throwing your ideas in the fire until you start realizing that you need to seek him for his ideas and his strategies and his principles, and then you need to marinate. And that's the second thing, is marination. You need to make sure that you marinate on the principles. You need to become the thing that he's speaking to you about. You need to recalibrate yourself. I'll give you an example of a thing that God has shown me to look very closely at. And I'm actually extracting that principle from something that is taboo. Even to Christians, it's taboo. People don't really like to talk about this, what I'm about to say. But to the world, it's taboo, and to Christians, they don't like to talk about it. But I looked at this very closely and was like, this is God who did this, and I need to make sure that I make myself like this in the spirit before my Father. When he designed Lucifer, he actually made him the best worship leader ever. He is the highest angel, period. Not now, because he's fallen. But he used to be the highest angel, the chief, the worship leader. He created his organs and his body were instruments. He had pipes for bones. Instead of veins, he had strings. So, you got to think about this for a second. He could sing, and he didn't need a band or an orchestra. He didn't need that because it's in his body, and he can control all of them at the same time. So he's singing, and he doesn't even need to think about, okay, when do the strings come in, or okay, we need some percussion over here, and No, all he has to do is sing, and his body naturally would just start playing the music in the background. Out of his pores would come the melody, and his mouth would be singing. This is how God created him, which told me something about God, not about Satan, because he didn't do it, and he squandered it. So I want to take that principle from him. I want to snatch that, and I want to use it here for my spirit, and you need to use it for yours. And it taught me that God wants us to become what he speaks to us about. to actually be able, he wants us to take it so serious what he's talking to us about that we are throwing everything that popular culture tells us and everything that's cliche and banal that everybody's shouting about in the world. We need to throw that into the fire and let him custom build us. And we need to treat his principles just as serious as we treat our heart or our kidney or our bladder or our muscles and our lungs, our physical lungs. We need to treat his principles that seriously so that we can really create with him, so that he can speak to us about the song he wants us to do, and he can give us the lyrics, and we don't even have to worry about the instruments. We're good. This is how our God creates. This is how our God expects that we align with him. And this is something that people don't like to talk too much about because it's supposed to be taboo. It's, oh no, we can't talk about how God says in the Bible how he created Lucifer, who became Satan and fell. It's not because we need to talk about Satan. We need to talk about God. Satan did not create himself. This is an example of a principle you should look at and say, what does that tell me about my God? And how do I need to implement that so he's pleased with me, so I can create on the highest level possible? If you think like this, it's guaranteed that you will be able to prepare God's wonders on the earth, and he will be very happy with you. And he will keep assigning you new things because there's not too many people who can do what I'm speaking about. There's not too many people who are willing to throw away popular culture and create totally brand new things. There's very few people. And especially not with God, people don't do it. They don't really even know this level exists. One of the reasons is because our pastors don't teach us this, because they don't know it themselves. They are cookie cutter pastors. And it sickens me because it sickens God that our pastors are so cookie cutter. Everyone looks the same. They all want to dress exactly the same. They all want to preach exactly the same. They have the same music. They have the same praise breaks. They have the same foolishness. And they just all just jump and dance and try to talk in the exact same way, use the exact same examples. They are total fools. And I'm saying this with God's authority because we have to get out of this cliche Christian world that we live in. We are about to make new things with God, and being a Christian is going to mean a different thing in this coming era. It's going to mean a better thing. It's going to mean a greater thing. And it's going to be closer to what God had in mind when he wanted us to be examples to the world. This is a message that should be marinated on. Hail Jehovah.